It was many, many years ago, more than I want to admit. I was attending college at Nelson University in Waxahachie, Texas, while dating a girl in my hometown of Irving. It's a long, sad story, but we broke up. It's just what happens in young relationships. Now, I get it. You say, well, not us. We're going to stay together forever. No, you're not. You're going to break up. If that's your first boyfriend, that's your first girlfriend, you're going to break up. But maybe not everybody. How many of you here married your very first boyfriend or girlfriend? Dawson? Pastor Dawson? Okay, well, that would be it. Pastor Dawson, great. So one out of a lot. So you're going to break up. You're not, Dawson, because if you do, you're fired. You're staying together. Anyway, it was my first real relationship. I was heartbroken. I got in my 1968 Pontiac Catalina, which maybe is part of the reason why we broke up. I'm not sure. Dark green, black interior, no air conditioning, and a cassette deck. Now, let me pause for those of you under 40. A Pontiac was a really big, ugly family car. That's why they don't exist anymore. A cassette deck was a device that played something called tapes, like CDs, but much more difficult to manage. Anyway, I got in my car to head back to school, and I put on my favorite sad song, All I Needed to Say by Michael W. Smith. The song is 4 minutes and 27 seconds long. I sang that song at the top of my lungs while I cried my eyes out 10 times in a row. I wallowed in the saddest song I knew. So do you have a sad song? Turn to the person next to you and share the title of your favorite sad song. Did you have some good ones? Here's just 3 or 4 of what I think are my favorites. I'm so lonesome I could cry. How about this one? I'm just a bug on the windshield of life. And surely someone brought up this one. The last word in lonesome is me. Basically, just any song by George Jones. Now, those songs are all sad, but I want to show you an even sadder song in the Bible. We know it as the Book of Lamentations. Lamentations means the act of lamenting or expressing grief. You know it's going to be sad when that's the name of the book. Yet in the middle of this sad, sad song, we find one of the greatest promises in all of Scripture. Let me set the stage. The Book of Lamentation focuses on the trauma experienced by the king of Judah and the capital city, Jerusalem, at the hands of Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians. In Bible times, cities were often softened by siege warfare. The city was surrounded, cut off from food and water. The thirst and starvation decimated the population, and then once the enemy was weak and dying, the city was invaded, the king was killed, the temple was destroyed, and most of the people were taken as captive slaves. That was the situation. The Book of Lamentations was written by the prophet Jeremiah. Jerusalem lay in ruins. The temple of God was burned down. People were kidnapped, taken away. It all happened because God's people turned their back on him. They knew right, but they did wrong, rejected God, and chose a life of sin. Jeremiah sat among the ruins and wrote a long, sad, painful song about the hurt and what caused it. The first 2 chapters of Lamentations sound hopeless, like everything is wrong and nothing will ever be right again because of sin and failure. Listen to just some of the words, starting with chapter 1, verse 1. How deserted lies the city, once so full of people. How like a widow is she who once was great among the nations. Bitterly she weeps at night. Tears are upon her cheeks. All her friends have betrayed her and become her enemies. All who pursue her have overtaken her in the midst of her distress. Verse 5, her foes have become her masters. Her enemies are at ease. The Lord has brought her grief because of her many sins. Her children have gone into exile, captive before the foe. Verse 11, all her people groan as they search for bread. They barter their treasures for food to keep themselves alive. Verse 16, this is why I weep, and my eyes overflow with tears. No one is near to comfort me, no one to restore my spirit. My children are destitute because the enemy has prevailed. Now, chapter 2, my eyes fail from weeping. I'm in torment within. My heart is poured out on the ground because my people are destroyed, because children and infants faint in the streets of the city. In the day of the Lord's anger, no one escaped or survived. Those I care for and reared, my enemy is destroyed. I've been deprived of peace, chapter 3. I have forgotten what prosperity is, so I say my splendor is gone and all that I had hoped from the Lord. That is sadder than any country song. One of the most difficult things about being pastor is talking with people whose lives have been wrecked by sin. They're broken and desperate. Marriage is destroyed. Bank accounts empty, sky-high credit card debt, broken relationship with family and friends. Sin moved them outside of God's blessing and protection. And now they're crushed by consequences and overwhelmed by grief and loss. Many times they just want to give up. Sadly, instead of crying out for help at the first sign of sin, they often continue until they find themselves at rock bottom. There's a lesson in that. Don't wait for rock bottom. When you first start going the wrong direction, turn around. Don't keep going towards pain and destruction, because if you move towards pain and destruction, do you know what you'll find? Yeah, pain and destruction. Sometimes their life is wrecked because they got caught in the consequences of someone else's sin. It's always sad to see, but understand, your sin and failure affects not just you, but also those closest to you. Your spouse, your parents, your children, your church family, everyone around you is affected. Other times, circumstances beyond your control have disastrous consequences. You just have to deal with the effects. It's where Jeremiah was, utterly devastated by the sins of the people and the destruction of the nation. For the people of Jerusalem, it seemed too late. The city and their lives were in ruins. But then Jeremiah's song took a turn. And what comes next are the most well-known verses in the book of Lamentations. In fact, most people only know these verses. They've never read the rest of the book because it is so sad and depressing. Chapter 3, verse 19, Jeremiah writes, I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Life was difficult, discouraging, and depressing. Jeremiah acknowledged that. And there's a lesson for us. It's okay to tell the truth when you're hurting. In fact, that's healthy. And it's okay to remember those seasons. When I was a kid, I was rejected and made fun of. And every great once in a while, I share the whole story. The last time I did, a guy came to me in the lobby and confronted me, looked me in the eye, put his finger in my face and said, you should never tell that story again. That's in the past, and you should leave it there. That's not your story anymore. And I looked at him, and I said, well, of course it's my story, and I don't ever want to forget it. I want to remember how it felt. I want to remember all the emotions. I want to remember it all. The way I see it, you can do one of two things with your story. You can grip it tight and allow it to define and control you, or you can release your story to the Lord and allow Him to use it to minister to others. Your story in God's hand is a tool. When they get up in Forever Free and introduce themselves on Tuesday nights, Pastor Lane will say, hi, my name is Lane, and I am forever free from alcohol. He identifies the story of his past and says, I'm not still living in that story, but it's my story, and I'm free from it. God will use your pain to minister to others. Every time I tell my story, it gives me opportunities to minister to people who feel lonely and rejected, like they don't fit. So thanks for your opinion, but I'll never quit telling my story because my past reminds me how good God is. For Jeremiah, the hurt was fresh. I remember my affliction, my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. But then the song turns on one little word, the word yet. Yet is the kind of word that signals what your English teacher calls the shift or the turn in a poem. It's a change in thinking. What comes next is my favorite of all the promises in the Bible. I like them all, but this is the one I repeat over and over. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Now remember, 3 verses ago, Jeremiah said all hope was gone. But now the song turns from depressing to encouraging, from hopeless to hopeful. Something Jeremiah remembered restored his hope. A change in his perspective resulted in a change in his attitude and gave him a new song to sing. If you haven't already read ahead, here it is, the thing that changed this song, the promise. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I want to walk through that with you. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. You are not cut off. You are not without hope. You have not come to an end. God's love has not run out for you. In fact, he has an unlimited supply. God never quits loving you. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. The word used here for compassion signifies a warm compassion, a compassion that goes the second mile, a compassion that's ready to forgive, a compassion that replaces judgment with grace. Though Israel sinned against God through idolatry, immorality, adultery, and rebellion, the Lord started over again with his people. God's determination to love and bless and heal is unending. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The road back may be long and difficult, but it is possible to be whole again. Not because of your goodness, but because of his goodness. His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. The word new doesn't mean something that never existed before. Instead, it's a fresh renewal of what's already been experienced. Practically, it looks like this. When you wake up on Monday, God's mercy and compassion is fresh and new for that day. And regardless of what happened Monday, when you get out of bed on Tuesday, his mercy and compassion has been renewed for Tuesday. And guess what happens on Wednesday? His mercies are new and his compassions never fail. And when you wake up on Thursday, there it is again. I could go through the whole week, but you get the picture. With each new day comes new mercy and new compassion, fresh and new for that day. My mom always said it this way: God never promised us grace for tomorrow, but he promised grace enough for today. His mercies are new every morning. When I was writing this message right here, I got big tears in my eyes because that promise means so much to me. If you spend any time around me, you've heard me sing an old hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness. When I sing Great is Thy Faithfulness, it's not just a hymn to me. It's not just a lyric on a screen. I've sung that song in the dark, in the most desperate times, in the most discouraging times. That's my song. I've sung that song literally in the dark. I was a senior in high school. Our youth group had gone to a Saturday night concert that lasted late. We got back to the church about 11 o'clock, waited for the straggler parents to pick up their kids. I told the youth pastor to go home, that I would wait with students and I would lock up the building for him. I locked up the building and was waiting in the parking lot, and 3 kids were still waiting for a ride home. The last parent picked up their kid a little before midnight. Unbelievable. Let me pause this story and just tell you that's one of the most frustrating parts of student ministry. Parents don't do that. Believe it or not, the class pastor and youth pastors don't enjoy being stuck at the church with one kid for an hour and a half after they're supposed to be picked up. I understand that you're enjoying your night, having a great dinner by yourself without your kid, and you think we're just excited to stay with them another hour and a half. We're not. And we are not allowed to leave them alone. We got to stay with them. Listen, they will love your kid, but they won't like you. If something happens and you're late, don't drive up and act all happy like nothing's wrong. Did you have a good time? Well, no, we didn't, because we've been sitting here an hour and a half waiting on you. Instead, the moment you arrive, start apologizing. And don't stop apologizing until you're gone. And when you get home, write a note and include a gift card in it. That has nothing to do with the story, but that's been in my spirit for a long time. It was late, and I realized I still had the church band keys in my pocket. I was supposed to put them back. So I went back in the building to return the keys, their spot in the usher's room, the front of the building near the sanctuary. I had to enter the back of the building because that's the only door my key fit. I went through 3 sets of double doors that I had to unlock, finally made it to the front lobby, turned on the lights, and headed down the hall. I opened the door to the usher's room, put the key on the hook, and was turning to leave when I heard the sound of a light switch being flipped and the whole hall went dark. My heart was pounding because I knew I wasn't alone in the building and that someone was close because I heard the light switch. I couldn't call for help because I didn't have a cell phone because, oh wait, they hadn't been invented yet. So I did the only logical thing my frightened mind could imagine. This is probably not what your approach was, but in that moment, this is what I did. I kept the lights out and started walking. I figured as long as it was dark, that guy wouldn't know how big I wasn't. I didn't run because I didn't want him to know I was scared to death. I walked down the hall, whistling, "Great is thy faithfulness," sure that a bullet was going to hit me in the back at any moment. When I'm afraid and overwhelmed, that's the song I sing. It reminds me of a faithful God who's with me. I whistled it because I didn't want the mad axe murderer in the church with me to hear my voice crack with fear. I made myself walk slow and whistle my fear song. When I hit the outside doors, I took off running for my car and drove out of the parking lot like a madman. Got to a phone, called the pastor. He called the police, who discovered that someone had broken in the building, and apparently I scared him off. He saw these guns and he took off running. That's what happened. That night, nothing about my situation changed. The building was still dark. I was still alone. I was still afraid, but I wasn't abandoned. My response when things go bad is, the Lord is faithful. It's my words of celebration. The Lord is faithful. In times of fear and uncertainty, I declare the Lord is faithful. When I don't understand, the Lord is still faithful. Even in the face of unfathomable loss, the Lord is faithful. Roger Sims was on his way home after being released from the army. He didn't have any transportation, so he started hitchhiking, and after a few minutes, a new black Cadillac pulled up and the passenger door opened. Roger ran to the car, tossed his suitcase in the back, thanked the well-dressed driver as he slid in the front seat. And the guy said, "You going home for good?" And Roger said, "I am." He said, "Well, you're in luck if you're going to Chicago." He said, "Not quite that far, but it's on the way. Do you live in Chicago?" The man said, "I have a business there. My name is Hanover." The whole ride, Roger felt compelled to share Jesus, but he kept putting it off because he was intimidated. Finally, 30 minutes from his home, Roger cleared his throat and said, "Mr. Hanover, I'd like to talk to you about something very important." He shared about Jesus, explained salvation, then asked Mr. Hanover if he would like to receive Jesus as Savior. Hanover pulled over the side of the road. Roger thought he was going to be kicked out of the car. But to his amazement, the man bowed his head, side of the road, accepted Jesus. Took Roger home, gave him his business card, told him to look him up if he ever was in Chicago. 5 years later, Roger found that business card, went to Hanover Enterprises in Chicago and asked to see Mr. Hanover. And the receptionist said, "Well, you can't see Mr. Hanover, but you can see Mrs. Hanover." Roger didn't really understand, but they took him back to meet Mrs. Hanover. She held out her hand. She said, "You knew my husband?" And Roger shared the story, how her husband had given him a ride home after the war. She said, "Can you tell me when that was?" Roger said, "Well, I remember it perfect. May 7, 5 years ago, the day I was discharged from the Army." And she said, "Can I ask, was there anything special about that day?" He hesitated. He said, "Mrs. Hanover, I explained the gospel." He pulled over to the side of the road, and he wept against the steering wheel, and he gave his life to Jesus that day. Mrs. Hanover began to weep uncontrollably, and she told Roger, "I prayed for my husband's salvation for years. I believed God would save him." And Roger said, "Well, where is he?" And struggling with her words, still weeping, she said, "He died. He was in a car crash right after he let you out of the car. He never came home on May 7th, and I thought God had not kept his promise." Sobbing uncontrollably, she said, "I stopped living for God 5 years ago because I thought God had not kept his word, and now I know God was faithful." It's not a theory, it's a fact. It's a promise we can stand on, and it is our source of hope. The Lord is faithful. Circumstances do not change the faithfulness of God. No political or financial crisis changes the faithfulness of God. War in the Middle East and sky-high gas prices do not change the faithfulness of God. God has always been, and God will always be faithful. Failure is not final because the Lord is faithful. The dark cloud surrounding you won't be there forever because the Lord is faithful. When there is not a penny in the bank, the Lord is faithful. When your life song is sad, the Lord is faithful. When you find yourself in an unexpected, unexplainable sad season, the Lord is faithful. He is a totally reliable, completely dependable, promise-keeping, faithful God. Even death doesn't change it. Because one day you'll stand before God. On that day, you won't be asking questions or arguing. People are always like, "Well, when I get to heaven, I've sure got some questions for God." Really? Really? When you get to heaven, you're going to go stand and you're going to see Jesus face to face, and you're going to say, "I want to talk about the flat tire I had on May 9th, 2026, and I was late for work because of it." No, you're going to look Jesus face to face, and you're going to say, "Lord, you are faithful." Now, if that doesn't make you want to stand up and shout, I don't know what will. We serve a faithful God. To an uncertain, unclear future, we say the Lord is faithful. In the middle of a storm, we declare the Lord is faithful. We serve a faithful God, always. Every family faces challenges. You get to choose what your outlook would be. When my wife Cindy was diagnosed with kidney cancer, we were rocked. You never want to hear those words from the doctor, but through it all, our statement was, the Lord is faithful. We almost lost my daughter-in-law, Emily, when our granddaughter, Evie, was born. Our hearts were gripped with fear, but our mouths were filled with this phrase, the Lord is faithful. 3 years ago, my youngest son, Parker, was trapped in a civil war in Sudan. It was life or death for 2 agonizing weeks. Never forget, my friend David flew here just to be with me for 2 or 3 days. And on that day where Parker and JT and Randy got in a vehicle to head across Khartoum, driving on streets that had been filled with gunfire and bombs and death, and they left that hotel, I knew what they were facing. Tears in my eyes, I looked at my friend and I said, even if Parker doesn't make it, the Lord is still faithful. We are not unique. Every family faces challenges. But our family has decided no matter what life throws at us, through every circumstance and every storm, the Lord is faithful. Every morning when I leave the house, kiss Cindy goodbye, and then I tell her, today is the first day of the rest of our lives. And you know what we discover? He's faithful. It's okay to hurt and grieve. But instead of a sad song of lament, simply say this: the Lord is faithful. I may be hurting. I may be confused. I may not understand what's happening to me right now, but the Lord is faithful. My faith, my trust, and my confidence is in him. People may let me down, but God will never let me down. He is wonderfully faithful. Some of you, your life song is sad. You're afraid and overwhelmed. You don't know what tomorrow holds. You've been trying to carry that fear on your own. The promise we've been talking about today, the Lord is faithful, is not just a statement for believers. It's an invitation. God's faithfulness is not something you earn. God's faithfulness is something you receive. Jesus came for people in dark places, people who are afraid, people who are overwhelmed, people who feel like their story has already gone too far to be redeemed. He lived the perfect life, died on the cross for our sins. He rose again so forgiveness and new life could be offered freely. That's faithfulness.